Hey guys, Mike Garrison here, liverc.com. You are listening to episode number 187 of the Radio Impound podcast. I'm happy to be in the studio with Gotti Jr. and the one and only Jason Ruona.
Yeah, what's up, Mike?
Hey.
That was great, Mike.
I think it's been almost a year.
It seems way longer.
Yeah,
I've been missing you for too long.
It does seem like a while.
We dragged Mike back against his will.
That's right.
Had those
I did not want to be here.
Yeah, Mike doesn't want to be here at all. I don't blame you, Mike. But look, the silly season's going on, and you're writing all these articles talking about it. We said, what better guy to have on the show than Mike Garrison to talk about it?
It's silly, man.
Silly. Silly. What's silly about it?
Everything. You name it.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Silly means there's just a lot of nonsense, chaos.
Chahos.
Like I see like I picture that silly string stuff that people like used to. You push the button and the string comes out everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what
But they have like 6 of those cans and they're spraying them all at once.
Yeah, I got in trouble. I was working at my uncle's hardware store when I was a teenager, and he had silly string in stock, believe it or not, because we had these goofy things at the counter, and me and my cousin would spray that shit all over the place on us. When he was gone, we'd be like ambushing each other and stuff, and we got busted because the girl that worked there ratted on us because my uncle found the cans like, stashed in the shelvings and stuff, and the empty cans, and he flipped out, and he's like, who did this? And this girl said, right over there. He did. I'm like, what?
Girl.
You rat. Yeah, I know.
Girls
You
are fun.
dirty rat.
You can't trust them, Mike.
My wife's sitting next to me in the car right now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Well, sorry. Well,
I'm getting punched in the face as soon as I hang up.
I have a feeling you're going to get punched in the face regardless. But, yeah.
Well, maybe. Never know.
Oh wow.
But anyway, there's my little story about silly string.
Well, anyway, that's what I visualize when I see silly season.
Yeah.
So I would say I wasn't around, don't get me wrong, in RC world like in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But from the time that I kind of got into it, kind of dabbled in it in like early 04, 05, and then I started getting into it heavier after that. But since I've been in, I would say this is probably the most, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but the most odd and unexpected silly season so far, in my opinion.
I would agree.
I think, and I
think
don't
it's
know
the biggest. I think it's the biggest one we've had so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not so much like the people that are moving or like the number of people that are moving around. It's the kind of, with all due respect, off-the-wall companies that you're like, what? Why did they go there?
Yeah.
That's what I think is like what's the most shocking part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good, analysis there of, kind of this season. I mean, to me, I had somebody talk to me the other day about it also, and I said, yeah, I think it's the biggest, the most radical off season we've had ever, that I can remember. And like you said, big moves, but also very different moves. And I think that's what's really kind of making it interesting. And, it's kind of the first one I can remember where it's like you can say like the winners and the losers of silly season type of thing. Like when in pro sports, when they trade a player and they say who is the winner and loser of this trade. There's a lot of that.
Yes, I would agree. 110%. I also think it's weird, not weird, but yeah, weird. I'm going to say weird, that none of what I would consider the 4 or 5 major brands have really signed anybody. Like, I mean, there's a few here and there, but it's like S-Works signs Cavalieri. Agama signs Lutz, Techno signs Tebow. So I think it's a big year for like the up and coming companies more so than the already established major manufacturers.
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is there's some people that have a name and they're wanting to cut costs, and then there's people that don't quite have that name and they're looking to establish and get more notoriety for their brand. And I think that's explains the direction. It explains the Cavalieri moves. And the one that really just seems to kind of be swing and a miss is TLR. To me, they're getting a lot of great regional talent. You know, just looking at a list here of like, you know, Chile kind of broke down for us, which was Tom Rinnerneck, Michael Twilling. You know, they're getting some good regional talent, and Tom is sort of on the verge of being a national talent, I guess you could say. But they're not getting that big hit. They're not getting that Cavalieri, that Rivkin, that Mayfield, you know, Lutz, Tebow. None of those guys are going. You know, they're not going to TLR.
No, and I was trying to think. Really, TLR last year, they had JR and Dakota. And as far as U.S. drivers, that was kind of it for their like factory team, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, without thinking too far into it, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it. You know, I know Tanner Denny made a big run with them. He kind of gets, I guess you could say, the benefit of them not having another guy to send to a race, and they kind of send him because they don't have another guy. You know, like at the Worlds, they had Dakota, which was the top dog, then Reno, then Tanner were kind of their three guys with the new car trying to get something done. And then, you know, Reno was the guy that ended up beating all of them. But Tanner was there, in my opinion. I mean, he's a great driver. He's fast, but there's other people that I think could have beaten him, but they didn't have a TLR deal, right?
Sure. That makes sense.
And there, it is a little bit, and I think right now what people don't like is, you know, if I had to put myself in that position, they just don't have a new four-wheel drive electric buggy. And I think that's one of the things that people are a little apprehensive about is if you have multiple companies to choose from, which some of these guys do, they're picking what they think is best for them. And I think they know the two-wheel drive is solid. They keep updating it. It's really good right now, the 5.0. But the four-wheel, no matter what they do with that thing, we've talked about this before. I've talked about it with Frank Root. No matter what they do with it, people don't like it. And for whatever reason, and I think that might be some of the apprehension. And then the 8 scale, the 8X got off to what I would consider a little bit of a rough start.
Yes.
So those two things aren't doing them any justice. But you know, if I was a racer like a Cavalieri, I would have seriously considered TLR because I feel that some of those things are going to happen quickly down the road. But I think also these guys aren't following Dakota in the door. You think about how many people followed Mayfield into the Yokomo thing, and you look at how many people really, they're not following Dakota into the TLR thing. So it kind of says a little bit about the drawing power of some of these drivers and who they're able to kind of help recruit in a sense.
It's funny that you mentioned the Yokomo thing, because with the help of Tim Wallace, I'm trying to work on putting together a kind of a flashback Friday of before Yokomo was cool. Like, it seemed like overnight, Yokomo just became like the team, the car. You know, Mayfield goes wins the worlds with both two-wheel and four-wheel, and it's like, where did all that come from? I would venture to say that there are some people that think that Yokomo is a new brand, and it's not by any means.
Yeah.
But Mayfield made it cool. So now Mayfield kind of made it a new brand.
That's very true. And, you know, we've talked about this on the show before, and I know when obviously we're pretty close in terms of his decisions and things. And I think the Yokomo one he was a little unsure about when he first started. I mean, I remember going to OCRC with him, and when he tried the cars for the first time. This was the two-wheel, and then the four-wheel drive was the belt car at the time. And we had to run at like 2 a.m. so nobody was there. So it was me, Mayfield, and Jake there at like 2 a.m. and Ryan's running these Yokomo cars, and it was like, we ran the two-wheel, and we're like, all right, looks pretty good, and Mayfield driving it, and he was running the four-wheel, and we're like, well, I guess, and I guess he can make this work, and that was the four-wheel with, the belts and that type of thing. So then he ran he signed with them. He was a little unsure, I think, about how that was going to go. And of course he was, with Mugen cars for 8 scale, he was like, oh, that's, to him, that was like the top of the line, and he wasn't not worried about that. And the Yokomo cars, he was concerned about, I think. And then he ran the Reedy race, and he was in contention to win, and even with the four-wheel with the belts, and he broke once, and then he was in contention all the way down to the last race, and an E-clip came off of his shock shaft, and in the last two-wheel race, and Cav ended up winning it, and he got second, I think, and it was like, I think after that race, he just told him, yeah, two-wheel's okay, need to fix the shock shafts, but I don't like the four-wheel. We need a new four-wheel. So they made a new four-wheel for him, fixed the shock shafts, and then he wins both classes at the Worlds. And it's like, oh, all right, well, that worked out pretty well. And
I wish I had that kind of power.
Yeah.
My car's not working. Can you make me a new one?
And that's what happened. I mean, he just told me, said, yeah, I don't think this thing works for you. We need a new car. And they're like, okay. And he backed it up. That's the part that, he's like, not only did I tell you that I didn't like it, but when he made me a new one, I won the Worlds. So worked out pretty well. But now what's kind of nice about it, we've talked about it before, is he's able to run the Yokomo stuff, and then when he switches over to run 8 scale and run Mugen, they can work on the 10 scale cars while he's not racing them, and the development kind of doesn't stop. So they kind of make things keep going. He'll run a race and do just like he did at the Reedy race. All right, this shock shaft's not going to work, and whatever the shock shaft of the day or the weekend is, he tells them, and he comes back to the next race, and Shin's like, okay, new parts, fixed it. And he's like, well, okay, cool. And he might have been out running 8 scale. He comes back and they got a update. So he's been pretty happy about that. And so I think a little apprehension, like he started the whole thing saying he was a little unsure, and then it's really ended up being, very well received. So, and I think that explains a little bit of that run that you talked about, making it a little cool. And he got into it maybe with that same apprehension that you're talking about. And he kind of got in there, and Um, I don't know. I kind of see it like the bull in the china cabinet. You go in and knock some dishes down, and this isn't going to work. And then pretty soon they fix some things, and it's like, okay. And people, I think, took note, and they want to get on with the other, on the team, and it's been going pretty well from that standpoint.
Now, is Yokomo still distributed by AMain?
Yes.
Okay, so everything Yokomo comes through AMain.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. I wasn't 100% sure because actually somebody asked me the other day, like, is there a Yokomo USA? And I said, well, there is for a team-wise, but I wasn't honestly sure on, like, another team that I don't know anything about as far as, like, how you get their stuff is on the on-road side of things, like Infinity. Like, they've been doing really well in on-road, but I don't know in the U.S. where you get anything from them.
I have no idea. I have no idea where to get it. I've looked around. Like you said, I don't know.
I'm going to Google.
They have a really cool, like a fuel stick thing, kind of like the Proline fuel stick, but it's like I don't know, it looks a little different. It's got carbon fiber handle and that kind. Anyway, I wanted to get one, so I was looking around for it, and I have no idea where to buy it.
That's crazy.
Okay, this is a whole nother, not really a whole nother conversation. It's on the same thing. But there is a little bit of a trend, I guess you could say, of there's a difference between being a race company that's trying to win races and sell product to support your race team and make a profit, right? To have a company. There's those companies in RC and race teams, and then you have ones that they're not really concerned about, at least from the outside looking in, they're not concerned about making a profit, or if it's a good business model, or if it's profitable. They're just like, I like this, I have the money, I'm going to put money into it, and we're going to win, and I'm going to be happy. And it's like part of the hobby for them. And that's kind of my impression of Infinity is, they're in the business. Sure, they like to sell stuff, but from what I understand, money isn't really an issue for them. And that's a big difference, because you have companies who are trying to sell what they market and advertise to employ people and all that type of stuff. And then you have people that are just like, no, this is fun for me. I have the money to do it. I'm going to go out and get a bunch of drivers. We're going to race. And if we win, that makes it fun for me. And that's all that's important. So there's a little bit of that going on in RC. And it's so if you see a lot of people piling into Infinity, that's probably the reason. These guys aren't running it because it's good, it's been monetarily rewarding for them to run it. So, or if they want to maintain a career in RC, that's where they have to go to do it.
I was actually surprised more drivers didn't go to Infinity over the off season than the very few that did. Like I really expected guys like, let's say Cavalieri or Lutz or some of those drivers to join Lee Martin, and I expected some big names to be going that way, but nothing really surprised me in that front.
Yeah, I think part of that is most of those guys that we're referring to or are in our circle, I guess you could say, they're mostly off-road drivers, and I think Infinity kind of got off the ground a little with Lee Martin with an Infinity, but I don't think that has gone anywhere for them, and it hasn't transformed into a car. Like even Nayato. Nayato is a big Infinity driver, maybe the top one besides Mark. And he was running the Worlds in 8-scale nitro buggy, but he's got big Infinity stickers on the car, but the car, nothing is Infinity except maybe the fuel gun, like you said. I don't know. And then you have there's a couple guys that are racing like that, and Lee Martin was one of them. But recently, Lee Martin started running a Gamma car under the Nemo brand in the UK. So I'm not sure if the Infinity thing's over for him. That's what it kind of looks like to me. So he might be Yokomo Agama now, which is, like you said, it's kind of one of those odd combinations that are popping up.
Yes, one of very many.
And what that is all about is there's only a couple manufacturers out there that can supply an off-road driver with every vehicle. So when you think about it, Associated's one, TLR is one. What's Kyosho? Kyosho's one. X-Ray, right? That's at 4. And so guys like Cavallari or Mayfield or Spencer or whoever we want to talk about, Jared, they have to find a player that has all those vehicles because it can justify the pay that they're looking for from that company. So in Cavallari's case, he wanted to go down the Yokomo road, so he needed to find a suitable 8-scale partner that was okay with him splitting up his program like that. Similar to Mayfield went the Yokomo Mugen route. Cavallari went the Yokomo S-Works route because that was a company that didn't mind splitting up with him, and he couldn't get like an Associated part deal. He couldn't get a TLR part deal. All these other companies aren't willing to do that. So it really kind of limited his choices quite a bit. It was kind of down to like Serpent and S-Works and companies that were okay with splitting up like that. And that's explaining some of these moves is because of, it was a shared cost, and then, Cavallari can come up with a salary he's accustomed to, but now it's two different, split between two brands.
I'd be curious to know who the highest paid RC driver on the planet is and what their salary is.
I know all of the guys that I'm close with. Who I don't know is guys like Bruno, Mark Reinhardt. Those kind of guys I'm not really familiar with, but I would venture to say, if I had to guess, that between the Ryans and Spencer, I would say they're 3 of the 5 top paid guys in the business.
And you see a lot more of these guys too. Like, they're still paid drivers, but they're also working for these companies. But those guys, to the best of my knowledge, are just literally paid racers.
Yep.
Like Drake, for instance, is an employee of Mugen, but he's also a racer. Whereas those guys are just strictly paid for racing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was thinking, along the lines of your question. But I would say they're 3 of the 5. If somebody's doing better than them, they must be bringing something extremely valuable to the table. Like I said, I don't know Bruno's situation. I can't imagine. I mean, he kind of burst onto the scene. It took some of these other guys. It's taken Mayfield and Cavallari since 2004 or 5 to get to the point to where they are. Bruno kind of just came out in 2014 or something. So, but I wouldn't be surprised he would be one of the guys. And then Ty Tessman. I would say he's right there. I mean, honestly, when you look at, the ones I'm not familiar with, like Mark Reinhardt and these guys, but I would still say the other guys are probably, and it's because they can race so many cars. You can basically put 6 or 7 different vehicles in the hands of the Cavalieri and Mayfield and these guys, and they're running for a podium, and they're going to get their fair share of wins throughout the year. And I think, you have some specialists out there. We'll call, like, I know Robert Battles. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, 8-scale driver of all time. But he only races that class. So, and if these other guys can race 6 or 7 classes, and he's running basically 1 or 2, you can kind of see the big difference.
See, I've done the opposite. I've tried every other class known to man, just looking for a podium, just one podium. That's all I want, just one. So I've tried all the classes, but I'm still looking for that one class that I can find that podium in.
Yeah, I just wrote down sort of the 8 steps the other day, the 8 steps that people can cycle through an RC, and I think it was 8. And kind of along those lines. You get into something, then you take it more serious, and then you get over the top, and I'll find it. We'll go over it. So anyway, yeah, interesting for sure. But I think that kind of explains some of the Cavalieri stuff. And he's out racing this weekend. They're doing CRC. It's his first race with the Yokomo. And yeah, I think he'll be fine. He'll do pretty well. The S Works is a little bit unknown. A little bit of an unknown, but I mean, Jorn and a few other guys did pretty well with the S Works stuff at the Worlds, and I feel like if they kind of get with Jorn, get the car up to what he's kind of learned, I think Cavalieri will be fairly close to turning in the exact same results as he had previously. But he's going to have to do a little work. He's going to need to get out, get it running, talk to Jorn, get up to speed, and I think he'll be close.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a great 8-scale driver, but when I hear the name Ryan Cavalieri, I don't think of 8-scale. I think of 10-scale.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, again, from an outsider point of view, I feel like that's more of his primary focus over 8-scale. That's just what it seems like over the years. So I think if he's happy with Yokomo, he'll make S-Works work no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I don't know if it cut out. Did I miss something there? Still there?
Hello.
Okay, I'm here.
Gotti, are you with us?
Let's see where he went.
He's gone.
That's kind of strange, huh? Let's see if he texts me. Well, we can keep talking.
Sure.
Where were we?
Yeah, right. Are you at CRCRC? CRCRC?
No. Thomas is there for us.
Okay.
So he's there. We got a good turnout there. 380 entries, right under 400, I think.
That seems to be kind of just under 400 seems to be like a magic number for most races. It's like that's a good number to have a solid crowd, but yet it's not so many that you're there for 16 hours a day. But yet it's still a good race program. It seems to me like the races that are 400 and under seem to be run smooth. Everybody's pretty happy, and it all goes well. You get much over that, and you get into like the 1,000 entry races, and it's like you're there forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, it's when you get over 400, it's pretty amazing how long it can take to finish a complete day off.
And I've noticed more and more races around here, like regional or local races, I guess you'd say, are instead of doing a 3-day format for, practice Friday, qualifying Saturday, mains on Sunday, more of the races are doing like a race format, and they're condensing everything into like Saturday practice, Sunday racing, and their turnouts are going way up. And I don't necessarily think it's because of just the heads-up racing. I think it's because they don't have to spend so long at the track, and they don't have to spend so much time off work traveling and that kind of thing. And I don't know, like the re-race format isn't something new, so I don't know why just all of a sudden it's come on. But what races that used to be like 2 and 3 days long are 1 and 2 day races, and entries are going way up.
Yeah, I mean, on our series, the Indoor National Series, we stick with, we're sticking with, we do Saturday and Sunday as our race program. But like you said, yeah, a Saturday practice, a Sunday race. If you can, fit them in, go for it, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like dirt and carpet. When more tracks start throwing in re-race style heads-up racing, it's kind of a whole nother ball game. Like it's just something different and unique. So I don't know that one's really any better. Everybody's always obviously used to like the IFMAR style. So that's probably what I expect most of your bigger races to be. But it's kind of cool to go to some of these races that are a little off the wall and they do like a heads up. And it's new, like the carpet was a few years ago. And so I think we'll see it start catching on a little more.
We'll kind of get into some of the questions here. This is obviously a good one. We've touched on it a little bit. We'll let you kind of give your take on some of these guys. But Chili is just saying for 2019, it seems like Associated Reedy has taken a step back as they have lost or elected not to re-sign many of their key pro and regional drivers. And he kind of lists them out. And he says, many of these drivers now running for TLR or Yokomo, plus various other electronic companies. Do you feel that this is due to the AE Reedy having to trim their race budget? Stronger competition from companies like TLR or Yokomo, or maybe racers just trying to maximize their earnings? So, and he's listing Cavallari, Rivkin, talking about Reedy Electronics, Randy Castor, Shane Borden, Matthew Gonzalez, Kevin Hebert, Tom Rinnerneck, Michael Twilling, and it's Mike. He's got Kevin McBride, but why can't I remember his first name right now?
Kyle
McBride. That's why. Okay, Kyle McBride. His dad's Scott McBride, I think. So what do you feel is, we've talked to this a little bit already. We've kind of went around, but we'll try to get his direct question. What do you feel is going on there?
My opinion is, it's kind of like along what you were saying, is I think on a regional standpoint, I think some of these companies, say such as Yokomo or TLR, they're trying to build their regional presence, which I know like around here, for instance, there wasn't a whole lot of TLR guys, but now there's going to be a lot of them. So I think a lot of the regional guys, perhaps, I don't know for certain, but perhaps we're able to potentially up their sponsorship, or we're offered a little better deal or a little better package than maybe Associated was giving them or willing to give them, because Associated already has, I mean, at our local tracks, Associated is, I'm going to say, probably the most dominant brand. And so they already have that name. So I think they're kind of like, well, hey, we don't need to pony up more for this guy. He hasn't really done any more than, whatever. But some of these other companies like Yokomo and TLR and stuff, they're trying to get their name into these tracks and these local tracks and stuff. And I've seen, like Jared races at our local track. So obviously that's going to help Techno locally. But he doesn't race as much as, some of the local fast guys. And I've noticed that a lot of local racers follow the local fast guys almost sometimes more than they do the pro guys, because they know them on a more personal level. So I think TLR and Yokomo see, hey, if we can snatch up guys like Michael Twilling, and maybe we offer him a little more than, maybe he's actually worth, or I don't know if that's the right way to word it, but offer him more than we should or we would normally offer somebody in his shoes. He's going to get his group of core racers that follow him and kind of look up to him and that kind of thing. They're all going to switch to TLR. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of it on the regional level. And I think on the pro level, as far as, guys like Cavalieri and like Rinderneck, for instance, I would imagine that's another one. Tom is, like you mentioned, he's kind of on that verge of being a national level pro and then a regional pro. And I think that, again, Associated didn't need Tom, I guess, is as much as TLR feels they need Tom to grow their brand and their image, because Tom has a huge following across Iowa and, Nebraska and that kind of thing. And, even when he came down to our track and was just hanging out, he's helping people, he's setting up cars. Brittany got a new B6 and, he was over there and he's changing shock oil for her and telling her, well, now do this, do that, and that kind of thing. And whether it was work for her or not, just having that interaction, it was like, man, this B6 is great. I'm going to stick with this Associated car. And now he's going to have that following with TLR. So, and I think the other thing that we're seeing with the regional guys, I don't know how exactly the Associated and the Reedy thing work. But I know from my experience with like the TLR guys and Horizon, when you're sponsored by Horizon Hobby, you're linked in, you've got a car, you've got access to Spectrum radio, Spectrum servos. Now they've got their chargers. I don't know if they've got any competition batteries yet, but you've got kind of everything all in one package. A lot of things are covered with just that one sponsorship. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like for Jared, when he goes to Techno, or even if you go to Associate, you got to, your radio's an outside sponsor, your battery's another sponsor, and that kind of thing. So I think that's a big plus for a lot of these guys as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of where Associated was at with Reedy, is when you race for them, like you said, you have access to many of those different items. And to me, that is a big thing with TLR too. You have a lot of access to those different items, and it's definitely a positive for the driver.
Yeah, and I definitely don't think, maybe they are cutting back their budget a little. I think everybody's probably cutting it back some here and there, but I don't think it's a bad sign by any means for Associated. Like, I don't think they're in trouble, or I just think their strategy going into this year and their race team plans is just a different thought process, and they're in a different place than TLR and guys like Yokomo. So I don't think it's necessarily a sign of anything good or bad. I think it's just a difference in how the companies are operating.
Yeah, some people are, when you're looking to improve, you're a little more eager with some of these guys, I think, is what you pointed out. And, certainly a lot of these guys kind of fall into that range. And when you're Associated, and maybe you are, and us at J Concepts, we're in a very similar situation. But we're kind of talking about the chassis here, but, we're in a similar situation. But, here, Associated has had all this, they have a lot of this racing talent spread out across the U.S., and people are kind of, they're picking off some of these guys, right? And they come in and offer them something, like you said, maybe a little bit, a little better than what he'd had before, and they're jumping on it.
Yeah.
So we got Pete Phillips is asking, when a driver goes to a sponsor that doesn't have an entry in a class, does the driver usually get to pick what brands they use for those classes? So essentially he's saying, like, Jared's running the B6.1 with his two-wheel because Techno doesn't have a car. Do you have any experience there, Mike, with, running a certain brand, and then since they don't have another, you can kind of choose what you want?
Sure. So obviously, by no means am I anywhere near the level of Jared, but I run for Techno as well. And basically, I'm assuming my understanding is you're free to run, whatever you want to run. And until most of the companies that I've found, if they don't have an entry in that class, they don't really care, other than I know I've heard some guys saying, when TLR didn't have their four-wheel out, you weren't allowed to run, they're a direct competitor that has all the other cars. For instance, Associated. If you were a TLR guy and there was no low-C four-wheel, they didn't really want you to run a B44. But you could run something, kind of oddball or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of hearsay. I don't know that for a fact. I wasn't, really in the loop on that during that time. But I do know from what I've talked to guys like Tyler Hooks, for instance. Tyler was finished second at the Roar Nats last year in the stock class, driving a B6, and obviously he's not sponsored by Associated, but they want their car to do good. So I would imagine a lot of these guys, even though it's free reign, and I don't think they're going to, they're obviously not going to list Associated as a sponsor, but I would imagine if Jared went up to, Brent or somebody like that, they're going to offer him some guidance and some help as they would their sponsored drivers, because they want their car to succeed no matter who's driving it. I mean, obviously they want their team drivers to do the best, but they're going to want their car to succeed. So what I found is they're free to run whatever car they want, but that doesn't mean they're just left in the dark either. I think, the teams work together. I know some teams also, not all, but some teams will also, because they just want your name on the track, will buy you, if they don't make a two-wheel, they'll buy you a two-wheel. Or you pick one and they'll pay for it, that kind of thing. I've heard of that along lines too. So I think most of them, for the most part, yeah, it's if they don't have an entry in the class, pick what you want. And there's a few that I know if they don't have an entry, they're like, no, you don't need to run that class. So not very many, but I've ran into a few.
So we got Joe Zaire. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
Joe Zaire. Okay. How much longer do you think there will be paid racers? It seems like manufacturers are tightening up their wallets when it comes to paid drivers. So, if you want to give your take, I can give my take afterwards.
That's a good question. I think the question that you would have to answer that question, in my opinion, is how do I want to word it? I guess as long as the hobby continues to grow and we bring racers in and not just bashers, I think if we can continue growing the racing side of things, there will always be paid professional racers. But when we start seeing the racing side of things start dying off more and more, bashing and just general RC start picking up more than the racing side, that's when you're going to start seeing racers cut back. And again, I still don't know that you're ever going to see, not paid pros, but I think you may see more guys having to work for companies as well as race for them.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, when I was coming up as a racer, and at that time, Mark Pavitas and Brian Kinwall worked at Associated, and they would clock in at the factory and they would work as long as they needed to work. But and then when things kind of changed in the business, and it was at the time Team Losi and Trinity, when they came in and essentially started paying Kinwald as a driver only, that's when everything changed. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Joel Johnson and maybe Masami worked for Yokomo maybe, but Joel Johnson, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a paid racer in those days. But when Team Losi and Trinity made that decision to pay Kinwald just to drive, that changed the whole industry. And, I was kind of in the middle of all that. Associated had to kind of change how they were doing things. They had to get contracts with their racers. That's where it all started. Anybody that receives a contract now for racing comes down to at that time when Associated had to make sure that their drivers were under contract, because when Team Losi and Trinity got Kinwald didn't have a contract with Associated. Neither did like the Mark Pavitases or me or any of these people. You could just, if you wanted to run, if you were an Associated guy and you were a Team Losi and you wanted to switch tomorrow, you could switch tomorrow. Sure, there's guys that still do that today, but back then it was like, you could, there was nothing really holding you to that other than your word of mouth or handshake or whatever you want to call it. But when the Kinwald thing happened, and that changed the whole racer industry, and then they started to have contracts. I know, Pavitas had to have a contract. I had one. Scott Hughes, Richard Saxton, Billy Easton, Jimmy Jacobson. I think that was the original crew at Associated that got race contracts. I'm sure they had a couple on-road guys too, but because when they lost Kinwald and that whole thing, it was also a big situation because Kinwald had just won the Worlds. They were coming out with a car that has picture on the box. They had a motor that had his paint job on it and his name. And it was like overnight he was like on Trinity and Losi, and they had all these products tied to Kinwald, right? And
wow, I did not realize all that.
Yeah, so it was like overnight, we show up at the track and Kinwald's running Losi and Trinity, and everyone's just like, what the heck happened? Associated's trying to sell a kit with his paint job on the box and a Reedy motor with his paint job on it, and all of a sudden, he was. So yeah, that's what changed everything. And so from that time on, things have been different, and I guess what I'm trying to say is there was a time when it wasn't like this, and at some point maybe there will be a change where maybe the driver, like you said, I think it comes down to, as long as it's making a difference and the drivers, the racing is popular, people are getting into racing and results matter, then there will be paid drivers. Like you said, if it doesn't and it goes the other direction, maybe like it was back in the old days where it was more bashing, fun, different type of atmosphere, maybe it would go away a little bit. So like you said, that all comes down to what's hot in the business, what's selling, and we're kind of in the middle of that right now. It doesn't mean that there isn't these guys, but we're kind of in that middle ground right now. So I think that's where the hesitation is with some of these signings.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree.
We got Kyle Gannon's asking, why do they always see 10 McDonald's drink cups in your pits?
Okay. So the story behind that's true. He's not exaggerating. So years ago, all I drank was like Pepsi, Coke, Sprite, that kind of thing. So then I decided I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to drink sweet tea. Well, little did I realize that sweet tea has just as much sugar in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then I transferred to unsweet tea somewhere along the lines, and somehow it became a terrible addiction. So now I just drink gallon upon gallon and gallon and gallon of unsweet tea.
Okay. So
now you have a caffeine addiction.
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Have you tried seltzer?
Yeah, actually, what was the name of that stuff? The problem with it is it makes you burp all the time.
Oh, okay.
And so I wasn't having it.
Okay. Because I got off soda and switched to seltzer, and it's been really awesome.
I think Adam Rails here has he's kind of going down a different road. He thinks this is a great topic. He said he believes, I also believe it has a great deal to do with the future of the hobby. There has to be a line where companies get their products in the hands of guys to help promote and provide support and not totally oversaturating it like he's kind of seeing now. And I think that's a little bit happening at the moment. I know for us this year, we're taking a slightly different approach. We've, with some of our team and everything, and we've just had to make changes to compensate for the. Basically, everybody in this industry lost one of their biggest customers, which was Hobbyco. Great Plains Hobbyco. When they went out of business, Hobbyco owed people money that were not paid. And there was a list floating around. We talked about it before. And so people had to make changes because they were owed money and they lost one of their biggest customers. So that's why people are making changes here, because you're trying to regroup. You're trying to find out where, as Horizon and these other people are kind of some of the only distributors in town, you're trying to feel for, all right, now what's it going to be like without Hobbyco, and what's Horizon going to do? And so there's a lot of apprehension to what's going to happen, and I think that's where you're seeing people being a little more careful, the Associateds, and that's what we're doing. We have, when you look down, you're looking at your team and what you got to do, and there's some guys that we lost this year, because of either budget stuff with 100% drivers or people getting offered a better deal. Like, for one, today was Cole Ogden. He signed with Hot Race Tires in Italy. Cole has been our guy for 3 or 4 years now. But they offered him money to race, and he couldn't turn it down. And not that I blame him. He's trying to be a pro RC racer, so he needs the money.
Sure. So,
I talked to him quite a while about it. I understand, but that's why we're losing him. It's somebody offered him money to race, and he wasn't in a position to turn it down. So I think Adam is a little, some of the things he's saying here, makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think, obviously I did my fake sponsorship thing,
mm-hmm.
and the whole point behind it was it was built a little out of frustration on my end, because on a local level, I think, I'm not saying sponsorship is all bad and it needs to all go away, da-da-da-da. I see a lot of racers coming in, especially kids, that get these sponsorships and then they put expectations on themselves of their Jared Tebow, their Ryan Cavalieri, and they burn themselves out and then they disappear. Or it sucks the fun out of it for them and then they disappear. On the flip side of it, I also see one of the manufacturers that did fake sponsor me, that I was, spoke to with, for the record, I'm not going to disclose those people's names. I've been in contact with all of them. There's people on social media, there's people on Live RC, whatever, that say, no, you didn't do this, you made this up. That's fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I've spoke to all the people that have fake sponsored me, and if they want to disclose that, they're more than welcome to. But I'm not here to get anybody in trouble or put somebody down or hurt the industry more than it needs to be hurt. So that's not the point of it. But anyway, I also was speaking to one of those manufacturers, and they said, here's the position that we're in. So we've got, a dad and his 3 kids that race, and they're all using our products. And they're not sponsored, but they were friends, of one of the guys that is an employee there. And they said, hey, can we get sponsored by you? They sent in a resume. We said, no, you're not quite ready to be sponsored and all that. Well, then the next week when he goes to the track, they're sponsored by another company. So now it's like, from their point of view, in order to to keep these customers and that kind of thing, if they don't sponsor just about anybody, somebody else is going to. So it's kind of a never-ending cycle. And it goes back to what you were talking about earlier with some of the other companies trying to make a name for themselves. You know, I mean, sponsorship is a great way to do that because you're locking in a loyal representative and customer to help build your brand, you know, locally and regionally and that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that sponsorship is all bad, and I'm not saying it should all go away. But I think the point behind it was to just kind of show, as you were talking about, how much the industry has changed and the whole direction of things. And the other thing that I mentioned in the article was that it does take away from hobby shop sales. And a lot of people assumed that I was talking strictly about brick and mortar local shops. But that's not necessarily all I was talking about, because speaking with some of the online stores that don't even have a track or whatever, they've suffered too, in the sense of, they lose sales as well. So it's kind of a big circle that there's no right or wrong answer, and there's a lot of goods and bads to it. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I think as racers, it's our responsibility to really sit back and say, am I ready to be sponsored? Am I really worthy of, being sponsored? When I say that, I don't mean you have to go out and win a million races and that kind of thing, but am I willing to put in the work that they're expecting of me, And the other thing I think racers have to look at is that going to take the fun out of this for me? And am I going to quit RC in a year because, well, I'm not finishing where I think my sponsors want me to be finishing? And I think that's the biggest part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, well, you really got me going now here.
We're all getting warmed up.
Yeah, I have multiple close friends and local racers that I have seen. They come to the track and all they are concerned about is, hey, I got sponsored this year. I got sponsored. And that's great. But I think I want more people to realize RC is not just about getting sponsored. Like, it's almost they're forgetting all about RC. That it doesn't even matter to them. All that matters is that they.
Hello?
Hello.
My Skype was calling me again, so I picked it up. You're still there, right?
Yeah, you there?
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened there. Mike there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Where were we?
Yeah, we were just going on about how, people want to do these group photos, and I understand it, but I'm a little against it because I think we should promote the name, the brand, and the enjoyment that you had to get somebody else into it. Not so much that, hey, look at me, part of this group. Why don't you need to be a part of this group, right?
That is exactly, I could not think of the words to explain. That is exactly the point. It's no longer about racing RC cars, and it's like being back in high school, and it's like, oh, those are the cool kids. I want to be part of the cool kids group.
Right. So I think just spreading the love of that you like RC, that the whole positive RC movement thing that's on Facebook, I think that's a big thing, is recognizing why you like it and sharing it with other people, that they should get involved. And I think that's the important thing. And then if you are sponsored, you need to talk about the brand and not about yourself.
Right.
So many people are turning this stuff into about themselves. And it's like, and this isn't just RC, it could be anything. People they want it to be about themselves. And I understand it. Sure, I like when, it's about me too or whoever, but the reality is it's not really about you. It's about unless you're doing it all on your own dime, right? If somebody else is helping you do these things, then that's a big contribution. And so I have something that I wrote about this whole thing that I will share with you guys. But anyway, we were looking at questions. We were just talking about Adam Rails. We got Tim asking what were some of your best fake names that you could come up with for people. He said Speedy McFasterson was one that he likes.
The funniest part about that question is no one will ever know how long I sat pondering all these different names, and then the more I thought about it, no, that doesn't sound good. No, that doesn't sound. No, he doesn't sound fast. I need a fast sounding name. What's a fast name? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm amazed. There's people like I think he's from your region. Is it David Fast? That's his actual name, right?
Yes.
And then there used to be a guy out in California. I think his last name was Racer. His real last name was Racer. There's some good ones, man. Like, you think they're made up, but I think they're real. Josiah, he says he's wanting to know your thoughts on the 10 scale truggy fad. How long will it last? Because he just got one.
So, my thoughts on the 10 scale truggy. Okay, quick backstory here. I have been that guy that everybody says, hey, this winter, let's race touring cars. So I go buy a touring car and then nobody else does. Right. Or, hey, let's race 12 scale or F1 or whatever. And so I have decided I am not going to buy one until I'm certain that everyone that is at our local track is going to at least race it, once a week or so.
Yeah.
And it's getting there. But I feel like it's going to do a lot like 8-scale truggy. I don't think this is going to be necessarily a fad that just comes and goes overnight, kind of like can't think of one off the top of my head. But I think it's going to be like 8-scale truggy. I think it's going to get pretty big in the sense that stadium truck, two-wheel drive stadium truck is no secret it's falling off. I mean, there's some areas it's coming back and that kind of thing, but for the most part it's falling off. So is short course. So I think this is kind of the mixture between the two. I think they're a little easier to drive than, a two-wheel drive stadium truck, but yet they still have the kind of the truck feel to them. So I think it's kind of a blend of the two. So I think it'll be really hot and heavy for a couple years, and then I think we'll see it kind of like truggy, and maybe some of the big races has a decent turnout and that kind of thing, but locally, it kind of depends on what you're at.
Yeah.
I don't think it will ever catch up to. I don't think it'll ever be a buggy class. I don't think it'll ever be like two-wheel drive buggy and four-wheel drive buggy.
That's tough, man, because those are just pretty set in stone. Like, if those two don't exist, then basically racing doesn't exist. Those two classes are racing, and the other ones are kind of novelties. So it just depends on which end of it that you're on. But yeah, I think you're on with that one, and I'd like to see it do okay. We're gonna offer it on our series events this year and just see how it goes. I don't want to dismiss it. I'll try it, and I'm totally, I'm there. If it works, I'm into it. If it doesn't, hey, we tried.
Well, I think a lot is said by, we're hosting our own race. Every year we host a race called the Off-Road Jam, and we're hosting it this weekend. And we offered all the normal classes except for four-wheel drive short course. We did not have that, and we did not have truggy, 10-scale truggy. So we got requests to add both classes, and I said if we get 6 or more, we'll run them. Well, four-wheel drive short course kind of struggled in there. Truggy, as soon as we listed on RC sign-up, we've already got 10, 12 of them jumping in there. I go look, we have 1 mod stadium truck signed up, and 12 13.5 stadium trucks. No Mod 205 short course. So to me, that's a sign of, okay, stadium truck and short course is kind of dying out, and this truggy thing may be the new thing that kind of takes its place for a while. So I definitely think it's going to grow, and I think I would suspect with all the different conversion kits that are coming out there, I mean, this is how a lot of, the newer classes kind of start out. I feel like Associated and that kind of thing will jump in with their own truggy before long.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, I just lost my pen, sorry. So along these lines, the other day I wrote something of, I don't know which way we want to say it, but at first I named it the 8 to hate or avoid the crazy 8. I can't decide which one. So to me, this is the cycle that I see sometimes, that people kind of have to avoid this mindset. Okay, number 1, get into something because it's fun, right? That's number 1. 2, then you get competitive. You buy a few things to get yourself going. That's number 2. All right, now number 3 is the juices are flowing. The results really matter. That's number 3. Now, number 4, extra money is spent. That's 4. Number 5, getting discouraged and the results aren't what you expected. This is where it starts to be like, oh no. Now number 6, the last resort, the Hail Marys. It's just, then number 7, sell off, regroup. And then number 8 is repeat the process on a new class. So
I think that's a pretty solid list.
So I can't decide, is this the 8 to hate, or is this avoid the crazy 8? I can't decide. But I think this is a cycle that you see over and over again with people, that they have a hard time. They get so emotionally involved in this. And I think, and this is where it comes down to, where you really have to kind of get your mindset built on the experience and the buddies that you have, and a decent time that you can have racing, versus just this, you got blood in your eyes, right, for this.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, yes. You should actually probably send me that list so that I can post that up so I can remember that as well on my roughest race days.
Okay.
To avoid the 8.
It's hard, man. I see a lot of people do it, and they bounce from, it's off-road to on-road to 8 scale to this to that. But and it's tough, because what you're chasing is something, you're chasing this, you're chasing the glory, and the glory might not be there, but it's okay, because there is sort of a being active and having fun and having a hobby is okay.
Yep. So, which that is very hard to remember.
It is. And I guess that's why I was thinking about it. I was like, So, is Gotti still there? Gotti's just hanging out.
Yeah, no, I'm back. I'm trying to look at stuff here on the computer.
You got the crazy 8. So, going back to the questions, we were doing pretty well.
Yeah, we had a little hiccup, and I was just seeing where it left off at, but I think it did pretty good, so we're fine.
Okay. All right, I'll pick up where we left off here. I think it was on Joe asking about where the little truggy class is going to fit in. And then we got Andy asking Mike, as a race announcer, how do you remember who's who out on the track by paint scheme alone? I've never seen you call out a wrong name.
So, I don't actually know like that. I think because I've kind of always been interested in like the graphic design type of thing, and painting bodies and doing the wraps and that kind of thing. I really pay attention to. It's not hard for me to focus on a paint job and be like, oh, I really like that one, or no, I don't like that one. So I think that really helps me differentiate things. But I will say, at the Nitro On-Road Worlds in Florida, they were going so fast, and those cars, the paint jobs from a distance on camera, all look identical, that I definitely called out multiple wrong names.
Yeah, I was watching.
Multiple times.
Yeah, I remember you saying you had trouble finding the cars.
Yes. And then a lot of those guys, especially in qualifying, don't want to ruin their paint job, so they all just run either a white car, a yellow car, or an orange car. And whatever, I feel like in the pits they were all like getting together and like, hey, what do you guys all want to run this time? And everybody ran all the same colors so that nobody knew who anybody was. And it made it really hard. Round 1, this is an orange round. Round 2 is a white round. Round 3 is a yellow round.
So he's asking me if I can bring some SCT ellipses and +3 wheels to St. Louis next weekend. I don't know how I can bring them there next weekend. We're not scheduled to be there for like a month. But yeah, those tires don't exist yet. Not that they won't eventually, but they don't exist yet. He can get the +3 wheels though, and he's saying that we should also bring Gotti to all the INS races and do the RIPCast live videos throughout the weekend.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who that would suck more for, me or Gotti.
Exactly.
I think I want to do it just to see if he could do it. Like, all right, you're here.
Now do it.
Andy says you're going live all weekend.
Oof, good Lord. Yeah, I don't know. That requires me to leave the house. I really don't want to do that.
And we got Chris Trudeau, who always has good questions, and he's kind of we talked about this earlier. He's just saying that before the social media age, when we found out in magazines that a driver switched teams, he's kind of comparing, like we talked about, Kinwall to Losi, Mayfield to Losi, Tebow to Techno. Are any of those bigger shocks than others?
As far as my era goes, I'm going to say that, yeah, still this year as a whole has been bigger than any, but I would say probably the biggest shock for me this year would probably be either Cavalieri to S-Works for 8 scale. It does not surprise me at all for Yokomo. That seems like a good fit. And then probably the other one would be Tebow to Techno, just because he's not made any major changes for so long. And Techno is definitely a successful brand, and they're making their way up the ranks, but I think that's huge for both of them. It shows a lot that Jared has the confidence in Techno, and I think it shows a lot how Techno has grown to be able to sign on, a multi-time world champion. So I think both of those would probably be the biggest surprises, and they're probably the biggest that I've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I agree. And Brandon Strout, is that how you say his name?
Sounds good.
Just super complimentary to Mike, super inspiration. He's just can't thank you guys enough for helping him RC racing, being a great influence over him, and you just being so inspirational on and off the track.
Well, that was really nice. Maybe my wife should hear that.
I hear that. I hear you.
To remind her, I'm not that bad of a guy. I do things right once in a while. She just said they don't know the right you. Apparently.
That's what.
No, I think that's part of what makes RC, and not just RC, but any form of racing fun, is it's a big family, it's a big community, so it's cool to help people out, and you see, not necessarily like on a really deep level, but you can inspire somebody to do something. It makes you feel good. It makes them feel good. And even if it's like, hey, you want some help changing that diff? Let me show you how to do that. And then it inspires them. They're doing more maintenance on their car, and that's just cool to see. So I enjoy doing that kind of thing, and it's cool to see comments like that.
He has a lot of good stories too. And we will share one, I guess. We'll let Mike fill in the blanks. We're just gonna say that you ordered Jimmy John's and an attractive lady delivered it.
Oh.
And we'll let Mike fill in the rest.
I don't think you can.
Actually, this sounds. I'm going to say which time was this that we're talking about, because there's multiple Jimmy John's stories. I can think of a lot of Jimmy John's stories, a lot of Pizza Hut stories that probably fall along the same lines.
So what he's saying, so he says Jimmy John's and a rather attractive lady delivers. So it's a club night, he says, maximum 4 hours. Mike is ready to make his move, so he places a second order. Second time, a rather large male makes the delivery. Now Mike is a taken man, and he and Brittany's antics are hilarious. From Brittany sweeping dirt landscaping to Mike mowing an RC track is pure entertainment.
I love it. I do recall that now. Yes, that was one of my feeble attempts at the RC track. I ordered once, and of course, being me and being an RC racer, I wasn't brave enough to say anything other than like keep the change. So I wasn't hungry, so I ordered another one, and then that didn't work out for me. And now I have Brittany, and she is so lucky to have me. She's just looking at me like she's rolling her eyes right now.
And we got, and Javier always comes in with great questions, and we answered his question basically from all the silly season, what was the biggest surprise, and you kind of went in and you elaborated on that. Lots of big surprises, I think, and then we'll do Kyle, and then we'll kind of have a what were we calling earlier? Hits and misses, winners and losers of silly season. That's what I think we'll go into. Yep. With the most recent Monday poll pertaining to banning of tire sauce, is this something that could be a reality in the future? Would this change the tire compounds on the manufacturer side as to try and achieve max potential without such additives? So I think Mike was a part of that article on Live RC. And what do you think, Mike?
Well, first, I just have to be completely honest on this. That was inspired by, I don't remember his name, but we got a message from a viewer of Live RC that said, this was after my sponsorship article and something else. He said, when are you going to write something that someone actually cares about and actually means anything in the RC world?
Oh, good Lord.
I said, okay, hey, sure, yeah, what do you got? What about tire sauce? So I said, okay, let's talk about tire sauce. So that's where that came from.
Wow.
So kudos to him. Yeah, I'm always open to viewer ideas. Some people have some good ideas. So bring it on.
Well, they say that about the podcast. They always say to me, when are you going to record something that's worth listening to? So
that's where the whole poll came from.
Yeah, you just got to move forward. That's all.
Yes. So that was the meaning behind it. But I think, I'm very torn on the whole tire sauce thing, because I understand that there are potential health risks behind it. Obviously, most racers have suffered from the headaches, the clogged noses, that kind of thing, being in an indoor race. But as a racer who wants to have their car feel and achieve the very best, I also don't want to see tire sauce go away in that sense, because in the right conditions, it can help if you're using the right tire sauce and if you're doing it the right way. But there are some conditions that it's all in your head. So, I mean, to me, honestly, if it goes away, cool. I'm probably healthier that way. If it doesn't go away, cool. My car's probably going to work better.
I'm totally in favor of not having tire sauce. I think it's horrible. I don't think we need it at all. I think we could make it work without it, for sure. I know we have before, we have in the past. But it's not something new either. I mean, we've been using tire sauce at one point or another since 1994. So it's definitely not a new thing. And I think we could it would be very nice to simplify how we prep and get ready with tires to run a race. But the problem always comes in is policing it and trying to set some of that stuff, setting it straight for any kind of a race. And you're always going to have people that are willing to take things to another level. And those are the people that kind of ruin it for everybody. And I'll use the Testmans as an example here. They, a couple of years ago, they're amazing racers. Obviously, one of the best in the business. But, a year or two ago, they started experimenting with a different compound. And then they realized that it was better. The saucing wasn't new, but they recognized that it was better when it was heated. And so they added not only another compound to the equation when we're running some of these races, but then they added an additional step to the preparation that was required in order to be as fast as them. And it ruined it for everybody else. And because then we found ourselves at Mimi's, we were at the Nationals at Mimi's a couple of years ago, and it was like, the tire prep was so out of control to go run a race, a qualifier. And, between heating the tires and burning them in and prep and tire sauce and all this kind of stuff, it was a huge deal. And it was just, and it was because everybody was trying to keep pace with them. They were willing to go to the extra. They're kind of the Kinwald of 2018, 2019. Kinwald in his day would do anything. It didn't matter how long it took or how much effort it was. He was going to do it if it was better. And sure, that is a great mentality. But when it affects the whole business, it's not good. And it was great when we all, it's like, all right, it's a clay compound track. We'll run clay compound. We got our gold. They got, whatever MC or whatever they call it. AKs are called clays or whatever. We're running that. But then we enter another compound into the picture when the track matures. Then we have to do additional prep work, sauce, heating, burning it in, whatever you want to call it. And that really took things to another step on these indoor races that guys really just don't like doing. And I think if we could eliminate these things somehow, it would really help. But policing it is just so difficult. And anything besides you mounting your tires in tech and tech keeping your tires the entire event, unless you're on the track, that's the only way you can do it fairly. And that requires a lot of manpower. The track or the organization has to have, you probably have to have 3 or 4 people just doing tire ins and outs, putting them on the cars, taking them off, keeping them in tech. That's a big deal. And that's just for a large race. I mean, you can't do that, for a club race and these type of things. And it's kind of unfortunate. And I think that's the reason why carpet racing has become more popular, because you don't have to do any of those things in carpet. On carpet, you're running these hard pin tires. Saucing's not an advantage. You basically, if somebody starts saucing, you laugh at them and you just don't want them to be around, because that's the reason you stop. Part of the reason why you don't want to race dirt. And so I would say that that's the only way to control that is by changing the surfaces, because trying to control it from a tech standpoint is a huge undertaking, something that just people aren't staffed to do.
Well, I know firsthand from the J Concepts Winter Invite at Fastlane, when the Invite class was gluing their tires, I was put in charge of policing them and keeping an eye on them. And after sitting there watching people glue tires for 3 hours, I was like, it's fine. Just go ahead and cheat. It's fine. You guys you get sauce. You can do whatever you want. So finally, JR came over and he relieved me. But, yeah, policing it would definitely be extremely, extremely hard. And it would take a very willing person to be the police officer of tires.
Mm-hmm. I remember we were doing the Neo Buggy race the last time we went, and I missed. I didn't like the race when it was in existence, but the last time I was there, I really enjoyed it, and I kind of missed the vibe that was there. But Phil hired the tire police to walk around and see if people were saucing in the pits, and I remember Mayfield was like so funny about it because the tire sauce police would come by his pit and pick up his tires and start smelling them, and Ryan's like, hey, yeah, they smell good, no problem. Guy's like, yeah, and he'd say, man, you better go over and smell Ty's. I think he's been saucing. So the guy would he would walk over and start picking up Ty's tires to smell them, and then Ty would look right at Mayfield and he'd just start laughing. And he'd say, it just became like a joke. Like they would, with the tire police is that Mayfield would go over to him and say like, hey, pretend like I'm giving you some money, And like to him it was just a joke. Like it was just fun. And, and it would be, he'd have a little joke with Ty or with David Ronafalk or something, and he'd see the guy go over, and he's like, yeah, I sent him over there. He would just straight up tell Ty and Gord. Gord would come over and say, can you believe that guy came over? He thinks we're cheating. And Mayfield would say, yeah, because I told him you were. And then they'd find that even funnier. So, yeah, that the tire business, it's not fun. I know the Testmans don't like it either. I mean, when you talk to them, they don't like it. But as long as it's legal, they're not going to sit back and not do something if they think it's better. They're going to do it because they want to win, and that's part of why they're so fast and so good. But I know it has ruined a lot of fun for some people doing the extra steps, but so that's Kyle's question. So anyway, winners and losers of silly season. We'll let Mike kind of give his breakdown on the winners and losers. I'll give some of mine.
Are we referring to companies?
Yeah, I think so. We'll go from it for their end. Actually, it would probably be nice to say both ends, but
okay.
However you like.
I'm going to say, from a company standpoint, I think the winning companies this silly season would definitely be Techno, S-Works, and Yokomo. I think would be the three that stand out the most to me. I think the winning driver from silly season. I'm gonna go with Tebow just for the sense of I've gotten the vibe that he is obviously he's getting closer to the end of his career, and I think he was getting very burnout and frustrated and that kind of thing. And I think more than any of the other drivers, I think his new deal and his new ride has kind of rejuvenated the fun and brought him, kind of back to where he's excited to go racing again. Where I think before that would be, he basically had the same program for how many ever years it was, 10 years or something. So I think he probably won in the sense that it rejuvenated his racing the most. So that'd be my picks.
Okay. And I guess, and then from a racing standpoint, or from a racer standpoint, you think that Jared was not only Techno benefited, but you think Jared also benefited from it as well, right? Yeah,
and I think not necessarily saying, that that Techno is better than Kyosho. I think just the kind of the fresh start for him was a bigger benefit than anything for him. And I think as far as losing from a racer standpoint, to be honest, I have to say that I think that Ryan Cavallari has a lot of work ahead of him for the S-Works. So I'm gonna call that a lose. People have asked me about my thoughts on Lutz going to Agama, but he's always been kind of in with the ground level in America with companies like Tamiya, Techno, and now like Agama. So I don't think that's necessarily I don't think that's going to hurt him, because he's good at that kind of thing, at starting with a brand that isn't really well known and kind of being the person that builds it, and not just from a popularity standpoint, but from a development level too. So I don't think that's necessarily a win or a lose for him. I think that's kind of what he's used to. I think it's probably very big. I think that would be a win for Agama for sure, because I don't think in the United States they really have any major drivers that I could think of.
Yeah. What do you feel is the reason why Lutz isn't still with Techno? I mean, I saw him post that it wasn't his choice. And that actually kind of surprised me. So, yeah, I was surprised by that.
I run for Techno. I'm friends with all the Techno guys. I'm friends with, all that kind of thing. But I'm not included on the inside scoop on that kind of thing, because technically everybody still looks at me as that's the media guy. So yeah. They leave me out of the loop. So I don't know anything for sure. But I feel like from watching, some of the recent events and stuff like that, I think there was maybe not a lot of it. There was some frustration from, Ryan, maybe with the cars, and he didn't feel like the cars were living up to what he thought they should, and the development maybe wasn't there. And then I think it was also, reverse roles, because you had guys on the team like Joe Bornhorst that they were going out and they were, beating Ryan, and that's not really what he was supposed to be doing. So from Techno's point of view, I feel like maybe it was like, well, you're complaining about this, but yet, Joe is beating you with the same stuff you have, that kind of thing. So I wonder if it was some of that. And I'm sure, like we talked about, money's a big thing too. And if you are Techno trying to make room for Jared, does that play a part into it? I know Techno's grown, but could they afford, Tebow and Lutz? So you got to wonder if that's part of it. When I saw that as well, I thought that was interesting, because I kind of assumed that it was his decision to, take a new route and maybe he could come up with a better opportunity. But that's not necessarily the way, it came across when he posted that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Let's see. So we got our winners and losers. Like you said, the obvious ones, if you're a company searching for the good guys, I think the real flashy moves, like you said, were with Yokomo and S-Works getting the Cavallari, a guy on that level, to race your vehicle. That's a win for them. And I think essentially flipping Lutz for Tebow is interesting, because that's kind of what it comes down to. Did they end up better off with Tebow than Lutz? I think Lutz was really very responsible for a lot of their growth with Techno, and I think It's interesting that it apparently wasn't good enough in the end to keep it together. And maybe just sort of the idea that Jared is definitely a more accomplished racer from a results standpoint than Lutz is. And I think maybe the curiosity of, what could this guy do with it? It is too much sometimes. You have to try it. But I think Lutz was definitely a big part of them growing because he does such a good job with people. People really like him, and they followed him around, and they followed his brand and that brand. And I don't see it having the same impact with a Gamma. I just don't. I'm sure he's selling that idea to them that he could have that same impact with them, but I don't really see that happening. I think that there was a little bit of a perfect storm with Techno coming around, Lutz getting on board, and then him helping them in a way that maybe he only could at that time. But I don't know if that window is the same right now. And I don't know if they're going to have the same impact. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's not going to have as big of an impact. So I like from manufacturers, nice to get Cavallari. It was nice for Techno to get Tebow. And I think those were all great. But I think some of the most interesting stuff was that Associated, I like what Associated did from the standpoint of they were in a difficult position. They had Spencer, Dustin, Cavallari. They had the current world champion in Ungaro. And other people that I'm leaving out, such as Alex Kay and Cole Tollard and the Champlins, who were coming on strong. Lots of upcoming racers. And I like the fact that they were able to keep Spencer, albeit just for Associated. They were able to – they have Dustin still. They were able to retain Ungaro, who's the current world champion. And they also have these upcoming drivers like the Coles, like Alex Kay, and the other guys. I like that for them. I think that it is a big blow not to have Cavallari, and he's probably your most accomplished racer. But if you have to make a move, I think it worked out pretty well for them. And they did it without spending as much money. So I think that was pretty wise, and I think they will be okay because of that. So I like that from their perspective. And the Lutz to Gamma, not really a big fan. I'm not really all fired up about it. I think he'll do okay, but I don't think it's going to have the impact. But the other one I liked for Kyosho, I liked that they got CJ Jellin.
That's one we didn't talk about. You're right.
Yeah.
That is good.
I really feel like if they had to give up Jared because, he was ready to move on and maybe they were too, who knows. Getting CJ, a young kid, just made the main at the Worlds. Obviously wasn't happy with the X-ray situation. And he can jump into Kyosho, and it's probably costing them much less than Jared. And the kid, you don't know what he can do. He might be able to be the next champion for him. So I like that idea. They kind of had Mason Epley. They kind of have a couple guys that really were on my radar for sure. And we're able to kind of scoop those guys up and kind of make something out of – really, it's been really kind of bland for Kyosho the last couple of years between the car releases and this and that. But I think this has a chance to be something if CJ continues to mature the way he is. It might be a really, really good move for them.
Well, talking about that, you pointed out something that I really hadn't thought of as well, but you're right with associated stuff, because whether it's 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, guys like Cavallari, Mayfield, Tebow, their career has less years left in it than some of these up and coming racers that, like you were talking about, Associated keeping on board. So I guess I'd never thought of it, but that is some strategic thinking in that sense to make sure that you keep guys like, you were saying the Champlins and some of those guys.
Yeah, and I think from a product standpoint, Spencer had no problems with the Reedy product and everything that he was running, but his racing is peaking to the point where he's getting big offers to run other companies. And the fact that he did not want to leave Associated was good. He's still with them. They weren't able to retain him for Reedy, but I think they're living with that because they still have him running the cars. And they realize, I think they think that most people are like, it's better to have him running the cars than having him not run anything at all. And they still have the Champlins and Cole Tollard and Alex Kay and a host of other people running Reedy, including Dustin, who probably had his best year ever last year running Associated Reedy. So they're still very solid there. And then all of a sudden you got this kid Ungaro with an 8-scale car that's just unreal. And he just won the Worlds for you. So you're able to retain your current 8-scale world champion. Your last 10-scale world champion was Spencer. So you have both of your guys, and you have some up-and-comers, plus Dustin is your wily veteran, right?
Yeah.
You're pretty solid. So, I don't know. I like that. I like them as a winner, to be honest. I like the big names for Yokomo and S-Works, and that's good for them. But I still like the position Associated is in. I think it's good. And I think TLR, they didn't win anything in the off season. They got some great regional guys that I really like Tom and Michael Twilling, but the big names aren't following them in, and I think that's a concern for them.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, anyway.
Any more questions? You'd rip through them all? Rip
it. Yeah, he did a pretty good job with that. I think that was everything. Well, we had one question that Vince Jaron asked Mike. His most memorable race calls, Moto, Endo, or RC. And then he also thinks that it'd be cool to have a moment with Mike on a regular basis on the RIPCast.
He hasn't listened to this episode yet. After he listens to this, he's going to change his mind.
It's like, man. So your most memorable race calls in Moto or RC?
Oh, I would say most memorable race calls for motocross would have to be either the Monster Energy Cup or the Hangtown Outdoor National.
Okay.
For RC, man, I've done a lot more what I would consider significant RC than I have motocross. Believe it or not, maybe because it's one of the freshest in my mind, but I really, really had a great time doing the on-road Nitro on-road Worlds, and I have never been to a 200 millimeter Nitro on-road race in my life. So going there, and I think working with Tyler Hooks, I think that was a lot of fun. The other one that I would say was probably the 10 scale Roarnats in Omaha, just because that was kind of a whole nother, that wasn't a live RC broadcast. I was, announcing for Roar at the event, and that was the first time that I had done a Roar National. And being behind the scenes as a racer, it's quick to, you're quick to point out the shortcomings of Roar and that kind of thing. But there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So calling the races were good, but I think just being able to be kind of a part of the whole race program opened my eyes a little bit to like, okay, yeah, they screw up here and there, and yeah, I don't agree with this, don't agree with that, but at the same time, I definitely see they've got a lot going on and kind of where they're coming from on some stuff too. So that's probably one of my most memorable ones as well.
Okay.
What was special about those motocross races? The two that you mentioned.
I think just for the fact that, well, the Monster Cup, because I think just because it was the Monster Cup, the Monster Energy Cup.
Yeah.
So, like, I'd never imagined that I would ever be saying when I'm announcing a race like Ken Roczen, Eli Tomac, and that kind of thing. Like, that's where you want to be. That, you know, that's like I've always dreamed of doing that. That would be so cool. But I'd never thought that I'd actually be saying the names. So I was like kind of like starstruck at that one. And then the Hangtown Outdoor National was a lot of the same, but at that one we were able to venture around the pits more and kind of, you know, mingle with those guys and get to know them and that kind of thing. And I guess, you know, another one that I can't count out either is doing the Ricky Carmichael Amateur Supercross at Daytona. That was really cool getting to hang out with, although it wasn't the pro side of the Supercross, it was the amateur side. I still got to meet and hang out with some of the announcers that I really look up to, such as Carmichael, Jason Wygant, some of those guys. So it was cool to meet those guys and be able to work alongside of them and kind of be in that group in the booth, you know, and so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
I think it would be like if Gotti was able to do like a big wrestling match.
That is exactly what it is.
Here comes Hulk Hogan.
Oh, man. Well, this was fun. The silly season talk. There you have it. Garrison, Ruona breaking it down. That was good. I feel these guys can go to any team and be successful.
Sponsors this year, Gotti?
What's that?
I said, do you have any new sponsors this year that you'd like to thank or announce for silly season?
Air Hogs. I signed with Air Hogs. Did you guys know that?
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a win for you and them. That's a win-win.
Exactly. Cavalieri and those guys, they can go over to Air Hogs and make them successful. These guys can race any car, Jason.
They can win with anything.
I know, really. So what does this all matter? I don't know.
I remember my buddy I had in racing, Jim Myers, with people, you know, he was in the early Trinity Tech Talk days, and, you know, he would get upset at those days because people would go on there and say, you know, oh, well, he signed with him, but he can win with anything.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, if it was Joel Johnson or whoever it was at the time, oh, well, he can win with anything. And then the big one was, oh, he can drive a shoebox. And then he started saying, okay, we'll give Joel a shoebox. I'll drive my car, and then I'll show you that it's not just, you know, he can drive anything. You know, he would just always break it down like, okay, I'll give him a shoebox, you know, and I'll show him what I can do.
Yeah. Well, Tech Talk, wow. All right. Garrison, can I get the RIP logo at boomrc.net if I want to decal my car up?
So you want to hear something about that?
Okay.
So Boom RC is now only doing custom awards.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Hey, didn't I say you should do that?
Do what?
Didn't I say that was I was thinking that was the business you should have got into?
Graphic design stickers?
No. Doing custom awards.
Oh, yes. Okay, so basically with me working full-time at Live RC now, and Brittany's got a full-time job as well outside of the graphic stuff, we just kind of made a niche doing just the custom awards. And so we're trying to kind of build on that as, you know, kind of the basis of it. So we don't do custom stickers anymore, which would be, that's why I like Joe Bornhorst and Jared and those guys are now with Stick It One, because Stick It stepped up and was like, hey, we'll take care of your team drivers. Because I didn't want to leave when I got the position at Live RC, and when Brittany did her thing, I didn't want to leave like our customers with just nowhere to go. So Brian has always been super cool with me. So I called Brian and I was like, hey, we got some sponsored drivers. Not to mention we have, just a customer base around here that they don't know where to go and that kind of thing. Can you, help them out and take care of them, that kind of thing. And so Brian did that, which was super cool of him. So, yeah.
His stuff is, I've obviously used it anytime we have a press release body to do. Anytime we ask him, he delivers. So I do the same. I recommend people go to the Stick It One. And now, apparently, if you need some custom awards, you go to Mike.
That's right, boomrc.net. Now, our website's kind of janky right now, but we're working on it. So just bear with us. I kind of had to strip it down, like, real quick so that it, like, where you order your sponsor sheets and T-shirts and all that, that's not on there anymore. So it's kind of bland at the moment, but when I get a few minutes, I'll spice it back up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike's multi-talented, huh?
Well, I don't know about that. He can't do the RIP logo decal anymore.
Right.
He can only concentrate on one thing.
I can do it for you.
If you want it on an award, he'll put it right on an award for you.
Yeah, exactly. If you want custom awards with the RIP logo, I'll be more than happy to do it.
There you go. Everybody is a winner with the Radio Impound podcast.
Yeah, just put that on there for me, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, I can do it.
Appreciate it.
No, I want to, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's always fun. Always fun to chat. She's sitting next to me, so I have to say thanks to my wife for letting me race RC cars and support me.
Of course.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna be that guy. So I want to give a shout out to the people that support my personal racing as well, which obviously would be Techno, Jason, and Allison, J Concepts, Teakin, Randy Pike, and all those guys. And I'm actually running Trinity batteries this year, which I'm pretty excited about. Wow. Yeah, that's kind of a new one. One Up Racing, Randy Castor, he's got some cool stuff. And of course, Live RC, good old Brandon over at Live RC. Yeah. So I think that's my shout outs. And shout out to anybody listening to the show.
I agree.
Mike, close the show out. This was episode 187 with Mike Garrison on the show. And now, did Mike confirm that he's willing to, because we had a question there that said that they want Mike on the show more often? I guess they want to kick me off and put Mike on, but that's fine.
I am always willing. I could never live up to Gotti Jr., but I will always join when there's an empty seat.
Okay.
And I'll bring my own chair, because I take my own chair everywhere.
Love it. That's great. All right, close it out, Mike.
All right, well, thank you all for listening to the Radio Impound podcast, and until next time, happy racing.